Ruth, when sick for home, she stood in tears amid the alien corn, the same that oft times hath charmed magic casements, opening on the foam of perilous seas in fairy lands forlorn. Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird. So he is again addressing the nightingale, and all this while he has been talking about death. In the previous stanzas, he was talking about how he has been half in love with death, and he doesn't want to go through the worries and the fret and fever of life anymore, and he thinks it is much richer to just die and fade away from life while listening to the song of the nightingale. But he's saying, even though he wishes he could die and fade away, death is not something that he associates with the nightingale. So he is calling the nightingale an immortal bird. It is not just some bird. All birds, all living beings are mortal, but because the nightingale is singing this beautiful song, and then in the rest of the stanza he will explain this idea of the immortality of the bird as well. The song of the nightingale is so sublime that he cannot connect that to, he cannot associate that with an ordinary bird, but rather he thinks that any bird which is able to sing such a beautiful song must be immortal. And therefore he says, thou wast not born for death, immortal bird. Oh, you who are immortal, unlike me, who just wishes for death, you were not born for death. So all of us are born for death. If we are born, we will die. But he is saying, you were not made to die. You are not born for death. Why? No hungry generations tread thee down. So, human beings' life in this world is a constant crowding of hungry generations. We are always hungry, not just for food, but for many other things. We are hungry for love, we are hungry for shelter, we are hungry for, to fulfill all our desires. So, we are always crowding this world and we are treading each other down. It is as if there is a stampede among all the people in this world. Everybody is rushing to be successful, to be loved, to be first, and nobody minds treading down other people. Nobody minds stamping down on other people. But the bird, the nightingale, is not part of this world. It is immortal. It is beyond mortality. It is beyond all the problems of ordinary life, because no hungry generations tread thee down. You are not trodden down by any hungry generations. Unlike us human beings, you are not concerned with competing or with success or with any other problems. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. The voice I hear this passing night. This night is also passing. This is a temporary night. It is a, this night, this moment that I am experiencing, the song of the nightingale, is a transient moment. So this passing night means this night which is passing, which is transient, which will not stay forever. So even though my life is transient, even though this moment is transient, the voice that I hear now is actually immortal. The same voice, which is the song of the nightingale, was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. So obviously it was not the same nightingale that sang in ancient days, which Keats is listening to now. But he is saying the song is the same. The feeling that is conveyed by the song of the nightingale is not very different, whether I am listening to it now in the 19th century or whether in ancient days the same song was heard by both emperor and clown. That is also something he's saying, that this it is not just an emperor, it is not just a powerful person, a rich person who can appreciate the song of the nightingale. The nightingale bestows its song like a gift, like a grace, like a blessing upon everyone, irrespective of their social standing, irrespective of their position in life. So whether you were an emperor or a clown, in ancient days, you would have heard the self same song. And because the song is the same across society and also across time, that is why he is calling the bird an immortal bird. അപ്പൊ നൈറ്റിംഗേൽ അന്ന് മുതൽ ഇന്ന് വരെ ഒരേ നൈറ്റിംഗേൽ ആണെന്നല്ല പറയണത്, ഒരേ പാട്ടാണെന്ന് പോലും അല്ല, ബട്ട് സംതിങ് ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് കൺവേഡ് ബൈ ദ സോങ് ഓഫ് ദ നൈറ്റിംഗേൽ ഇസ് ദ സെയിം വെദർ ഇറ്റ് വാസ് ഇൻ ഏൻഷ്യന്റ് ടൈംസ് ഓർ ഇൻ ടുഡേ. And it is the same feeling that you get while listening to the song of the nightingale, whether you are an emperor or you are a clown. So the voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. Perhaps the self same song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth when, sick for home, she stood in tears amid the alien corn. So in these lines, he is referring to the story of Ruth from the Old Testament of the Bible. So there is a story that Ruth was, I mean, some of you will be familiar with the story already, that Ruth was a woman who was married to an Israelite man, and her husband dies, and her husband and his brothers die, and the wives of the brothers go away. They go back to their families, but the mother-in-law, Naomi, is all alone, so Ruth refuses to leave her and go back to her family. Even though they are from two different countries altogether, still Ruth agrees to stay with Naomi because she feels that Naomi is just like her mother. So even though Naomi is her husband's mother, and even though her husband is dead and there is actually no reason for her to stay back, she was still very loyal to her mother-in-law. And then she, in order to support her mother-in-law, she worked in the cornfields of a rich man. And then later there is a story about how the rich man is so impressed by her devotion that he proposes to her and all those things. But basically, the scene that Keats is drawing on is Ruth working in the fields of corn. So she stood in tears amid the alien corn. So she was actually sick for home. She must have been feeling homesick, even though she was so loyal and so close to her mother-in-law. She must have felt some kind of homesickness when she was standing amid the alien corn. Alien here just means foreign. So something that is not part of you, something that is foreign. She was in a foreign land and she is working in the cornfields. She must have felt so homesick. At that time, a song found a path to the sad heart of Ruth. So she must have felt sad standing there in the alien or foreign fields of corn. She was all alone except for Naomi, and she must have felt a little homesick. And what would have comforted her then is the song of the nightingale. The same song, the same song must have found a path into the sad heart of Ruth when she stood in tears amid the alien corn and felt homesick. So this is again something, it is not in the biblical story, it does not say that Ruth was sad. Ruth supposedly was quite adamant about the fact that she is not going to leave Naomi and go away. But the poet is using his poetic license to assume the story of a young girl who has left her land behind and who probably feels very scared and very alienated, but still she will not leave her mother-in-law. And when she is so heartbroken, when she is so homesick, then probably she would have heard the song of the nightingale, the same song of the same nightingale. That is what Keats is saying. And she would have felt comforted. So similarly, the poet also feels comforted listening to the song of the nightingale. So all this is just to say that the song of the nightingale is immortal and it would have been heard by many people across the world, across social classes, across time. The same song that oft times hath charmed magic casements, opening on the foam of perilous seas in fairy lands forlorn. So here, In the last three lines of the stanza, the poet is evoking the image of a fairy tale land. In fairy lands forlorn, in some forlorn fairyland, in some faraway, isolated, lonely fairyland, perhaps the same song of the nightingale oft times, means often, has charmed magic casements. Casement means the window. So the door of the window is what you call the casement. So there are some magic windows. There is perhaps a magic castle in a fairyland forlorn, and magic windows cannot be opened. Magic doors cannot be opened by ordinary means. You need some magical tool in order to open that. So maybe the song of the nightingale is like a magical tool that can open these magic casements. And where are these magic casements? When they open, what do you see? Opening on the foam of perilous seas. So the foam, when the waves come in the sea very strongly, then sometimes, especially in moonlight, it will look like foam. It will look പത പോലെ അങ്ങനെ പതഞ്ഞു വരിക എന്നൊക്കെ പറയുമല്ലോ, അതുപോലെ ഫോം പോലെ പത പോലെയുള്ള വരുന്ന waves, തെരമാലകൾ ഉള്ള ഏതോ ഒരു കടൽ. So he's just assuming he's creating the image of a fairy tale land, a beautiful land somewhere where the waves are foaming in the sea, and there is a magic castle with a magic casement that cannot be opened by ordinary keys. But perhaps the song of the nightingale can actually open these magic casements. The same that oft times hath charmed magic casements, opening on the foam of perilous seas in fairy lands forlorn. So these are the different ways in which, through this stanza, Keats tries to convey the immortality of the bird. Keats tries to convey that the nightingale is not part of worldly life. First, he says that the same song would have been heard even in ancient times. So that means across time the same song has been heard. Then he says it is heard by emperor and clown. Across social classes, people can appreciate this song. It is beyond such social divisions. And then he talks about, he draws on the biblical story of Ruth and says that maybe she also heard the song. So drawing on a religious scripture like the Bible is also to elevate the song of the nightingale to almost a religious level. And finally, he talks about some distant fairyland, some forlorn, isolated fairyland, where the song of the nightingale has the power to open magic casements as well. And by saying that, he's saying it is not just on earth, it is not just in this world that we know, but in any kind of fantastic fairy tale world, still the song of the nightingale would be resounding. Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird, no hungry generations tread thee down. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. Perhaps the self-same song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth when, sick for home, she stood in tears amid the alien corn. The same that oft times hath charmed magic casements, opening on the foam of perilous seas in fairy lands forlorn. And then we move on to the last stanza of the poem, which again begins with the word forlorn. So as I mentioned earlier, Keats in this ode uses this technique of connecting different stanzas with the same words or phrases. So earlier we had seen the word fade away. With thee fade away into the forest dim. That was repeated later. The idea of fading as well as the phrase fade away was repeated in the first line of the next stanza, fade, far away, dissolve, like that. We had already mentioned this in the previous class. Similarly, in the penultimate stanza as well, the last line of the stanza ends with the word forlorn. In fairy lands forlorn. There, forlorn, the word forlorn, the adjective forlorn refers to how isolated the fairy land is, how distant and how far away from our world is that fairy land. But in the last stanza, the poet again begins the stanza with the word forlorn. Forlorn, the very word is like a bell to toll me back from thee to my soul self. Adieu, the fancy cannot cheat so well as she is fain to do, deceiving elf. Adieu, adieu, thy plaintive anthem fades past the near meadows, o'er the still stream, up the hillside, and now it is buried deep in the next valley glades. Was it a vision or a waking dream? Fled is that music, do I wake or sleep? So forlorn, the very word is like a bell to toll me back from thee to my soul self. So when the moment he says that maybe the song of the nightingale was also heard in some fairyland forlorn, the word forlorn immediately strikes him like a bell. So when you are lost in thought, lost in reveries, and you suddenly hear a sharp sound of the bell, suddenly you are brought back to your immediate surroundings. That is what happens to Keats. So the word forlorn is like a bell that tolls him back from thee, from you, from the nightingale, to my soul self, to his solitary self. So I suddenly remember that I too am forlorn, I too am all alone, I too am lonely. For a moment, I allowed myself to dissolve into your song, to forget my loneliness, to forget all my problems, and to identify with you, to become one with your song. But suddenly, when I thought of the word forlorn, suddenly I remembered that I too am forlorn, and I was brought back abruptly, sharply from that my reveries, from my dreams and my thoughts to my solitude, to my soul self. And then he says adieu. Adieu means goodbye. And he's saying, I was with you with the wings of my imagination. Earlier he had said, with the wings of poesy, not charioted by Bacchus and his parts, but with the viewless wings of poesy, I will be with you. And then he said, I am already with thee, tender as a night, etc. And now suddenly the imagination has broken, his dream has broken, and he is back in his own solitary self. And then he's saying goodbye to the nightingale, adieu. The fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. Fancy here just means imagination. Imagination is supposed to be a deceiving elf. Elf is a certain kind of fairy, a kind of fairy tale creature. Fancy, imagination is supposed to be something with magical powers. That is why elf, which can deceive you, which can fool us. So imagination can take us into faraway places, but that is actually a kind of deceit. It is imagine. Actually, we are not reaching those places. It is a kind of deceit. But so fancy is famed to cheat. Fancy is rumored to cheat us. It is supposed to be a deceiving elf, but the fancy cannot cheat as well as she is rumored to do. Even the cheating that fancy does, that imagination does, is not enough, because while being lost in my imagination, suddenly I am brought back to my reality. So reality keeps breaking through into imagination. I think that imagination is powerful enough to take me away from reality, because imagination is a deceiving elf which has the power to cheat me and to kind of cloud my senses. But that is not so true. Fancy cannot cheat as well as she is rumored to do, famed to do, because reality intrudes into my imagination. Adieu, the fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. Adieu, adieu. Again, goodbye, goodbye. He's saying goodbye to the nightingale because he's now slowly being more and more distant from the nightingale. Thy plaintive anthem fades past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now it is buried deep in the next valley glades. And then he realizes that the song of the nightingale is also fading away. He thought it is an immortal song, it will never fade, but the song seems to be fading away, because in reality, the nightingale seems to be moving further and further away from him. So he was in a forest listening to the nightingale, but after a while, the nightingale is slowly moving away from him. Maybe it It is flying away. Thy plaintive anthem fades. Anthem here just means a song. Your plaintive anthem. Plaintive can refer to a sorrowful or sad anthem. So your song, earlier he had said it is a song of summer in full-throated ease. It is a joyful song, but now that he feels very lonely, he feels that it is a plaintive song. It is also because it is now faded almost. Thy plaintive anthem fades. Where is it going? Past the near meadows. So near me, it was earlier, both I and the nightingale were in the forest, but now it has gone away from the forest to the meadows that are near the forest. Meadows, plains that are near the forest. Then it goes even further, over the still stream. Meadow in the upper, there is a stream which seems still in the moonlight, and the nightingale is even gone beyond that stream. Up the hillside, meadow, stream, and then there is a hill. A hillum kadanna. It has gone up the hill, and now it is buried deep in the next valley glades. Valley, the hill in the upper, on the other side of the hill, there is a valley. Next to the hill, there is a valley, and the song of the nightingale is now buried deep in that valley. So earlier it was so close to me in the forest, and then slowly it is moving further and further away until it is almost buried, until the song is almost lost. I cannot hear that song anymore. And with these words, we also get a sense of the topography, the landscape where the poet is actually standing. Thy plaintive anthem fades. Thy plaintive anthem fades past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now it is buried deep in the next valley glades. So the song has faded completely away. The nightingale has left the poet alone and gone far, far away. And now the poet is left with a question. Was it a vision or a waking dream? Fled is that music. Do I wake or sleep? That music is fled. The nightingale has disappeared, so the music has also faded away. The music is fled. The music has also gone away, abandoned me. So now I am confused. Was it a vision or a waking dream? Did I actually listen to the nightingale or not? Was it a vision? Did I actually hear the nightingale, or did I imagine it? Was it just imagination? Vision here can mean my imagination. Did I just imagine that nightingale? Or was it a waking dream? നമ്മൾ ദിവാസ്വപ്നം കാണുന്നൊക്കെ പറയല്ലോ, പകൽക്കിനാവെന്നൊക്കെ പറയുന്ന പോലെ, I was awake. I'm actually walking in the forest. I'm not dreaming, but maybe, again, I just imagined it. Maybe it was a waking dream. So basically he's asking, was the nightingale real? Was the song of the nightingale real? Or did I just imagine it? Because now I can't hear that music anymore. It is fled somewhere. Do I wake or sleep? Finally, he is even confused about the fact whether he is actually awake or he is asleep. Was it just a dream that I had? Because when I heard the nightingale song, it sounded so real, it sounded so close to me. I felt that I am already with the nightingale. I felt I am one with its song. So that was the power of its music. That was the power of art to transport me away from the world and from my sorrows and make me one with the world of art. It had that power. And at that time, I felt I am awake and I am part of this. I am listening to it. But now that the song is ended, now that the work of art is ended, now I am separate from it. Now the experience of art is over. Now I am confused. Did I sleep and did I dream all that? Actually, which is a reality? Is the world my reality? And was the song of the nightingale just a dream or a waking dream or a part of my imagination? Was it just a vision? Or at the end, when he's left alone, he's asking this question, do I wake or sleep? This is also interesting. There is a different way in which you can interpret it, which is to say that maybe the song of the nightingale was the reality. Maybe art was a reality. Maybe the real me, the real person that I am, has lost my soul completely into the music. And what exists now maybe I am asleep. Maybe the world around me is the dream. and the nightingale song was the reality. So it ends with this confusion. Rather than ending with certainty, the poem ends with a confusion. The first of all, did I ever listen to the song of the nightingale at all, or did I just imagine it? Did I just dream it? And now that I am left alone in the forest, why am I here? I don't know why I am here. Did I walk here in my sleep? Am I sleeping and dreaming that I am in the forest? Is my life actually just a dream? All these questions are left unanswered at the end of the poem. And this brings us to the concept which you are familiar with. You would have studied this concept during your degree in your criticism paper. This concept that is proposed by Keats called negative capability, which according to him is a very important capability that a poet should have, a very important characteristic feature that a poet should have, which is the capacity to be in doubt without any irritable striving after fact or reason. This is how Keats has defined negative capability. He says that a poet should not strive too much after facts or reason. Actual truth, factual truth is not what is important to the poet, and the poet should be able to be partly in doubt, to experience doubt and be happy with that. And he says Shakespeare is somebody who had that capability. And now, at the end of this poem, Keats himself is demonstrating that capability, because the poem does not leave us with any kind of certainty. Just like the poet's life itself is mired in uncertainty, as we already mentioned. If you look at his biographical details, this was a time that Keats was going through a lot of depression, a lot of problems. His brother had just died. His health was completely in ruins, and his relationship with Fanny Brawne was also, it was simultaneously something very sweet that was happening to him, but simultaneously he was full of pain that they were unable to unite in marriage because of his illness. So his life was mired in uncertainty, and the poem and the Song of the Nightingale, instead of giving him some certainty, is still leaving him in doubts, leaving him in uncertainty. And you can think of it as a negative thing, but the poet seems to, at the end, we do not get a completely negative picture. Rather, we get a sense of somebody who's lost in a dream. So, do I wake or sleep? It is not a disturbing thought, it is not an uncanny thought, but rather the poet is lost in doubt. The poet is lost in uncertainty, and he seems to be fine with that. So that is how the poem ends, by keeping both the poet and the readers at the brink of uncertainty. Forlorn, the very word is like a bell to toll me back from thee to my soul's self. Adieu, the fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. Adieu, adieu, thy plaintive anthem fades past the near meadows, o'er the still stream, up the hillside, and now it is buried deep in the next valley glades. Was it a vision or a waking dream? Fled is that music, do I wake or sleep? And these two stanzas, they seem to be saying completely different things, because in the penultimate stanza, Keats emphasizes the immortality of the nightingale and the eternal quality of its song. Whereas in the final stanza, he seems to be saying that even the song of the nightingale is actually transitory. Earlier, he had thought that the world is transitory and art, or the music of the nightingale, is immortal or eternal. But at the end, when he realizes that he is now back in the world and the song of the nightingale has ceased, it has faded away, it seems to suggest that the nightingale's song is also transitory. But if you put these two stanzas together, the same song was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown, the same song that Ruth probably heard. It's the same song that is heard in all kinds of universes, not just our universe, but even in fairy lands. Then when you put those together, what we realize is that the individual works of art may be transitory. The individual nightingales may be mortal. The individual songs of the nightingale may have an end. But tomorrow, the same nightingale may come, or a different nightingale may come and sing, and somebody else will listen to the song of the nightingale. So, the song of the nightingale is something, the beauty and the power of the song will continue to exist, and the power that it exerts on the mind of man. Maybe tomorrow it will not be the poet, it will be somebody else. Just like earlier it was Ruth, or it was an emperor, or a cloud. It doesn't matter. The power of that song will remain, and the power, the influence of that song on the minds and the hearts and the emotions of human beings, the soothing quality of that song will always remain. So that seems to be the conclusion that we can draw from the poem.